Hello, hello. Welcome to the Five Talents Podcast. I'm your host, Abel Pacheco. I interview the top commercial real estate investors and industry experts so you can learn from their experiences. So if you're an investor, a high W-2 earner, or real estate or tech sales professional that wants to invest in real estate without having to manage properties or leave your day job, then this podcast is for you. Or if you're already investing in real estate, but you're doing it part-time and you want to become a full-time multifamily or full-time commercial real estate investor, this podcast is for you too. You're going to learn a ton. You will learn from real-life multifamily investors and other professionals in the industry. They're going to share their blueprints for success, and I'm super excited that you're here. So I hope you enjoy the show. All right. Hello, hello. This is Abel Pacheco, your host for the Five Talents Commercial Real Estate Podcast. We're super excited today because we have just an amazing guest with us. He's going to bring a lot of value for you, for both passive investors. I think it's good to hear, kind of his insight, and also new general partners, because you're trying to figure out, how do I get the best deal at the best price? And how do I, figure out this whole world of buying a commercial asset? And Robert Arzola, thank you very much for having us on the show, man. So how's it going, brother?
Abel, thank you for having me. It's we're doing well. We're doing great. Family's good. Business is picking up.
Yeah. I that's great to hear, man. Family, business, everything, things are opening up. We record in November of 2020, and the deals are finally starting to fly. So it's exciting.
Yeah, and it's interesting because normally during this season is, it's RFP season. We're doing a bunch of heat checks and value checks for our clients, but I anticipate just continual deals to happen, as I think a lot of us took a break for 4 months. Maybe not you, Abel, because I know you guys were pretty busy, but the rest of the world was hitting the pause button, and I think we're still going to move along these next couple of months and finish off 2020 strong.
Well, great, man. I'm ready to ride the wave for sure. And hopefully that pent up demand helps, really all of us. What is it? The old saying is, all boats rise with the rising tide, or something
That's
along those
right.
lines.
Yeah.
So hopefully we're in that, man. Well, for those that don't know, Mr. Robert Arzola, he's the director of capital markets for JLL. Locally here, he specializes in San Antonio multifamily property. So that's how I've known him, got connected with him this year. Super, just grateful to have him in my network and helping me along the way as well. So he really spent the beginning of his commercial real estate career selling hotels. He did that at a competing brokerage shop. So he definitely has a good insight and a good mindset to what the heck is going on in the commercial space. And then if you're a Texas buyer, this is a good one to hear for San Antonio. So you should gain some value. And like I mentioned, both for passive investors and active general partners, I think you're going to learn a lot. So let me turn it over to you for a minute, Robert. Why don't you tell us, give us a good introduction, like who are you? Where did you come from? That kind of thing, just, in the commercial real estate space. Give us some color, and then let's just talk about, what you're doing today. We'll dive in from there.
Well, again, Abel, thank you for having me on the show. A little about myself, Robert Arzola, born and raised in Laredo, Texas. I went to university there, Texas A&M International University. I studied economics and finance. Did fairly well in academics. I thought that everybody and their mothers was just dying to hire Robert Arzola. That wasn't the case. I did a stint at Sony. I did a stint at Sony Electronics. I was just an accountant there, and then quickly moved into what I really wanted to do, which was real estate. Fortunately for me, I started off at Marcus & Millichap in their sales intern program. Worked for a very dominant hotel team there. And was really fortunate because I got molded by some of the best hotel guys. So for about 5 years, I was at Marcus & Millichap doing hotels in San Antonio and Texas oil and gas markets, which was fantastic because the clientele really helped me, I guess, just learn how to not only pitch, but more importantly, negotiate. And just it's a really, really interesting client. It's very private capital in the hotel space that I worked in. I was fortunate enough to make some really great impressions with some guys that I admire. And they moved along into JLL and they brought me along. But I had to make a pivot. I pivoted into multifamily. So again, I started off with a really great team at Marks and Millichap, and then I moved into an even, just as great team at JLL. And those guys, pretty much taught me a lot of great things. And so now I'm in a phase in my career where I'm leading the JLL San Antonio investment sales team. And I've dabbled in San Antonio. I've dabbled in Texas secondary and tertiary markets, Corpus Christi, Rio Grande Valley, and really it's up and down the chain scale. What I mean by that, we'll do a 50 unit to 350 unit, Class A to 1969 kind of thing. So you have to be a little versatile playing here in San Antonio and Texas secondary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. It's good insight. And one of the reasons I wanted, Robert on is because he's got a good, really insight to the South Texas area. Kind of what we talked about. I'm from Corpus Christi. That's where I grew up. We spent some time there. My first half of my life, and then now in San Antonio, the second half. And then, Robert was helping me or kind of coaching me along through, another acquisition that we're doing, and, McAllen, Texas, so RGV area. And so, all of those things kind of go as, hey man, Robert, you need to come on the show and you need to give us some insight. So your first 5 years, how did you get the first role at Marcus and Millichap? You went from no real estate experience, like you said, and talk a little bit about that professional development. I think we can all learn, no matter what we're doing, whether investor, W-2 full time, or anybody that's listening today. Talk to us a little bit about your path in professional development.
It's interesting because I literally didn't. Yeah, and at the university, I had a couple of jobs. I was a mentor, I was a tutor, but it didn't really help me, become the sales agent that I am today, and not anywhere close to the guy I was like 8 years ago when I first started. So I was that guy that first day on the job asked if I could go and use the restroom. Hey, can I go and take my lunch, kind of thing. It was bad. So I had to read a lot of books. I had to surround myself with some really, really guys that are a lot smarter than me, a lot of mentors. I think there's a couple of syndicators that really hone in on, get a proper mentor. And I was very fortunate enough, without even asking, there were guys at Marks and Millichap just, and whether it was they felt bad for me or whatever the case was, they were just, they brought me under their wing and were pretty much teaching me, the things to say on the phone, the things not to say on the phone, how to act, how to dress, how to tie a tie, kind of thing. Really just molded me into who I am today. So I'll give you an example. You're thrown in Marks Millichap, great company culture, one of the best places to start if you don't know real estate, because they really teach you what a cap rate is. Mind you, it's not like I've never seen a spreadsheet before, right, Abel? Like I was a finance and fortunately for me, I graduated, at the top of my class, but nonetheless, I had no real estate schooling. So a lot of it was self-taught, and a lot of it was through some of the workshops that Marks Millichap had. And the mentorship there, but really it's just diving in the deep end and being okay with being vulnerable, being okay looking like a fool. We had that phrase, play the clown. And what does that mean is ask a question, say something stupid, who cares? We've all been there. And continue to ask questions. I think that when you're not asking questions, like if I'm, teaching an analyst, if I'm talking to anybody or even a client, and they're not asking me questions, sounding silly or sounding dumb, then I can't gauge you and I can't talk to you and I don't know how to form the conversation right. And if you ask a silly question, all right, I'll bring it down a level and then eventually we'll start getting from there. So I had to play the fool a lot. I had to play the clown. And eventually I, was a dummy. And then eventually I was, buffoon. And then eventually I became somewhat half decent, okay, guys. I'm not smart yet. No, but fortunately I'm in real estate. You don't have to be smart.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I heard somebody else say, I can't remember exactly who it was. It was someone on my podcast, but they were talking about one of the buyers that had bought 3 deals, sold a couple, and he was asking his advisor. He's like, "Hey, how do you come up with cap rates again?" And his
Oh my
advisor was
goodness.
like, "Dude, we've done like $30 million in transactions, and you're asking me how they came up with this, or how does this number work?" That's the awesome part about real estate, in my opinion, is you can have a team of experts and help you and guide you, and kind of like Robert said, man, at the beginning, kind of played the fool a little bit, and if you don't ask questions, people don't know you where you're at, and maybe they would have given you this wisdom, this insight, this golden nugget for you to pick up, but they thought you were either 2 steps ahead or 2 steps behind, and they didn't want to give it to you. But if you ask your question, if you're bold enough to just do that, now people can kind of gauge exactly where you're at, give you some insight that may change your paradigm for the next few years, and you gotta get out there and do that, and it's awesome. It's good
Mhm.
stuff, Robert. Okay, so you did that for a number of years, cut your
Right.
teeth a little bit, had some great mentors. You definitely learned about cap rates. You took more than a few
Right.
workshops. So tell us about today, man. Tell us about San Antonio multifamily. What are you doing? How do you do it? And then I'll ask you a few more questions about it.
So I'll say this. I think both you and I, Abel, are very, very fortunate to be conducting business in Texas and even being conducting business in San Antonio. So, in San Antonio, we have an environment where it's labeled as, sleepy town, right? It's slow and steady wins the race, and it's like that wasn't too exciting, right? In 2019, you had guys just killing it in, Dallas and Houston and Austin. But fortunately, again, where we sit today, in San Antonio, we've been very fortunate because it's still slow and steady, and it's still in the right path. I keep telling guys like, look, San Antonio, yes, it's military city USA. We have a very healthy tourism market, hospitality and tourism market that, right now is not as strong. We have, professional services, we have cyber tech, and we have healthcare. And one of the things that I'm going to continue to hone in on with these guys, like, look, professional services is great for San Antonio. So, you know, for those that don't know, we have this area of town called Westover Hills, which essentially houses a ton of professional service jobs. I mean, I'm talking about, major healthcare groups, major large, banks. They have call centers, they have financial centers, and there's a stigma in call centers. They have that financial centers, I'll call it that. But these are jobs that all have degrees, and so we have a ton of that in San Antonio. And so I bring all that to say is what we're working on in town is we're working on a lot of deals up and down the spectrum. That's suburban product, core assets. Whether they're built anywhere between 2015 and above. There's going to be 3 pockets of town that they're located in as La Cantera, Rim, Stone Oak, and Westover Hills. We're working a bunch of clients that are doing workforce housing now is a buzzword, which depending on who you ask, it's you know 90s to 60s product, right? I don't necessarily work on the tax credit, low income housing tax credit, light tech deals, affordable housing, but I'm a market rate guy. But generally speaking, we're doing well in town. JLL, which again is um, the group that I'm working with right now. Just for those of you that don't know, JLL is the second largest commercial real estate investment services firm in the world. So I'm very fortunate again to even be associated with a group such as JLL.
Yeah.
We've been doing our own rent collections tracker, just like NMHC. Okay, so we have just a little shy of 2,000 units that we've been collecting data, and even and it goes to the point that I'm saying that we've been fortunate enough to do business in San Antonio. By our data set, San Antonio in the top 30 metros is number 4 throughout the pandemic from performance standpoint.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's pretty rock solid, man,
Yeah.
for being slow and steady.
I agree. For being slow and steady, the 2%, whatever growth year over year for like the past however many years, 20 or whatever year. Anyways, let me go back and summarize some of this, for those that are listening, because there's a lot of good insights, and I want to make sure you're catching this, right? If I'm a passive investor and I'm trying to figure out where to invest my money, Robert just explained in San Antonio, there's multiple different there's a lot of job diversity: military, hospitality, cyber tech, healthcare, professional services, and all of these types of jobs have professional, degreed, higher paying jobs. It's very diverse, and it's not a one industry type of town. So yes, we're talking about San Antonio, but if you're in Michigan today, if you're in Ohio, you're in North Carolina, you're trying to figure out where the heck do I invest, you can go take these parameters to any market that you're in and really start to break down your market. How many different types of industries, what types of jobs, what type of market, and that will tell you how diverse the job market is. And really the reason we say jobs and job market is because where there's jobs, there are people, and where there are people, there are renters, and where there are renters, then that's good for all of us investing our dollars in there. So, just a couple things, right? Another thing that Robert mentioned was the data set that they have to kind of collect properties on. So 2000 plus whatever listings, units, well, not units, but 2,000 properties, however you look at it, right? This huge data set that they've been collecting that's just like the NMHC. So Robert mentioned the National Multifamily Housing Council. They're basically, when you look at the data sets right now during COVID, this is an awesome time to look at the data on what assets are performing, what vehicles are performing. And multifamily is one of the top performers even during this time. And in our market specifically, San Antonio does pretty dang well. And, so we're, all these data sets, for a passive investor, these are important to start to look into, check it out, go to the NMHC's website. They have some data. I'm sure, Robert, there's probably some on JLL's website. They pull out a bunch of information, stuff like that, right?
Well, not necessarily this.
Okay.
This is proprietary. However, feel free to call me. I'll be glad to go through the
Yeah.
minutia in this.
Yeah. And, last point on what Robert's saying, right? So this data is so crucial, so critical to everything that we're doing. So whether you're pulling it off of CoStar, whether you're looking at the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, whether you're looking at citydata.com, whatever source that you're starting to look at, what you want to do is find your advisors, somebody like Mr. Robert Arzola in San Antonio for us. Man, the advisor, a great advisor will make you millions of dollars as a general partner, an active partner, because he's going to help you, guide you through this process. And if you're a passive investor, make buddies with somebody like him, because he can help you determine, hey, where should I put my money in my next deal, and who are the operators that I should go invest with. So, anyways, those are all great points. The general partners get all this data, but we have passive investors listening too. So this is awesome, Robert. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay, so now talk about, this is still for the passive investors that are listening, actually, and maybe even new general partners, somebody that's new to the world. I don't know how this commercial broker, I don't know how it works, right? Like, I know that when I bought single family houses, and I'm talking about me, I personally did this for 12 years. I knew there was MLS. I could go pick a property anytime I wanted, and I bought some houses off the MLS. I also bought off market. We did marketing and tried to talk direct to sellers. Commercial brokerage is a little different. The world is different. There's no MLS. So why don't you just talk a little bit about like just the way it works? How do listings come to market? What are the difference between different brokerage shops? Yes, I can go to like Crexy or LoopNet, but talk about this world a little bit, and then we'll kind of dig in.
Great question. So I guess I'll talk a little bit about, kind of how I'll get a listing, right? So what I do, and a lot of brokers do is, we'll pick up the phone, we'll call clients, and we will provide them a broker opinion of value, and really just kind of hear the client out exactly what they want to do. Do they want to refinance, which JLL does that? Do they want to put it on the market? Do they want to put it off market? And essentially, we're an intermediary in that regard. So what I do is as simple as I say, I find buyers and sellers and I connect them. Okay, so we do that. Now, once I have a client that says, Robert, I want to sell my property. Okay. Well, what I do is I pick up the phone or I send an email and I talk to guys who I have talked to already, right? Or maybe ones that that I know that are very active in the market. So every broker worth their salt has a distribution list. And so they'll have thousands of clients that they've talked to at one point in the past that are like, hey, look, I want XYZ property. These are my parameters. I want 150 units. I want 1980s and above. I don't want a chiller. All these things. And we disseminate that information out. Now, that is what I would consider for a broadly marketed deal. Mind you, every brokerage shop, JLL including, we have our own, portal. We have our own MLS, so to speak. Our website has not only the multifamily product that we sell, the office and office, the industrial, the retail, for sale. Our team also does leasing, so we'll have leasing sites as well. We'll have that, and every other broker does as well. So you can go through there. If I'm a new buyer and I want to go look at property, you know what? Sometimes you go to LoopNet, right? Or sometimes you'll go to CoStar. Sometimes you go to Crexi, or you go to Apartments. I forget the name of the other one. Apartment for sale. I don't know. One of those. You go to all those. The issue with going to those is that, one, sometimes the data is not accurate. Two, when it's not accurate, you're spinning your wheels underwriting deals that aren't available. And sometimes too, it's just not verifiable data at sometimes. So the best way, and something that you, Abel, are very good at, is just continuously speaking to brokers and saying, what do you guys have available? What are you guys working on right now? And eventually you stop becoming new and you start becoming seasoned. And so, like, if I have an assignment, I actually call Abel before he calls me, right? And so, and that's what ends up happening. So it's a lot of work on the front end for a new buyer. They have to do a lot of homework. Well, how do which brokers do I talk to? Which brokers are specialists here? Who does work in San Antonio? Who does work in New Braunfels? Who does work in XYZ markets? But you just have to do that because you need to hear the story, because these deals move, especially right now, the market being so fast and so liquid and so just on fire. You have to pick up the phone and talk to brokers.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. It's a good high level base, right? So we're trying to dig in, find out what the heck is going on. So how does this work? So thank you for that. It's great insight. Hello. You're listening to the 5 Talents Podcast. I'm your host, Abel Pacheco. If you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you're serious about achieving financial freedom. Are you ready to create your own path through multifamily investing for yourself and your family? Then I know you're going to appreciate our Investor's Guide to Multifamily Investing. It's titled Tackling Commercial Real Estate the Easy Way. We use this guide to invest ourselves in $93 million worth of real estate. So we're going to show you the basic mechanics of multifamily syndications and how to evaluate your next passive investment opportunity. So the best part, if you subscribe to our podcast now, leave us a review and a rating. I'm going to give you a free copy of our ebook. So please take a moment to do that now. Once you've done that, go to 5tcre.com/ebook, 5tcre.com/ebook. Make sure to let us know you left a review and we're going to send you a free copy. So thank you so much for subscribing to the Five Talents Podcast. We really appreciate it. Now, I am the new buyer, right? I'm a new general partner that's listening to this, and I'm trying to figure out, well, shoot, I would love to get a deal. I'm trying to find it. I'm trying to underwrite everything I possibly can. I'm trying to put in my offers. Man, how do I get on your radar other than calling you and bugging you? Because I bet you have some people that maybe bug you and people you enjoy speaking with. Tell us how to get into, your good graces from your perspective. What are the things that I can do as a new buyer, a brand new individual? I may have closed one deal. Maybe I'm looking for my first, but that we're, less tenured folks. How do I do that?
So I had the good fortune of actually speaking with some really good, just like first time buyers, just recently. And so what they did is that they called me, they emailed me, they introduced themselves like, hey, and I like when somebody tells me who they are and they profile themselves like, hey, look, this is my first deal that I'm doing on myself. I've been, on the LP side on 500 units. I've been on the LP side, 2,000 units. I just want you to know this will be my first. I'm going to have some skin in the game. Here's the KP that I'm thinking about using. If it's not him, I got 2 other guys that I'm working with right now. And I'm just, and so this first time buyer is talking to me. I was like, okay, he knows the game. All right, he knows what he's talking about. I talked to him about the deal, right? I give him the elevator pitch, sent him over the information. He did what he said he was going to do, which is important in this business, right? Because when you have your first interactions, the only thing that you're working off is your word, right? You didn't, and so you're giving everybody your full trust. And you're giving everybody word. Said, Robert, send me the information. I know you guys are going to be in best and final. If you can send it over to me right now, I will underwrite it and send you an offer, whether I am, hitting the mark or whether I am extremely away. And I will give you my pricing feedback and I'll give you my underwriting assumptions, et cetera. I was like, are you really going to give me all that? All right, fine. Go ahead. I'm going to. And so I send it over to him. And I had a lot of guys tell me that, right?
Yeah.
I kid you not. This one guy, and I'm not going to mention this guy sent me an LOI. He sent me proof of funds. He sent me his underwriting assumptions. The dude made a dang video walking me through his Excel, walking me through his model. I was like, all right. All right. So anyways, needless to say, he's in my good graces. Look, the offer wasn't competitive. Okay. That's okay. That helps me. That helps me as a broker because I have real-time feedback and I at least can point to reasons why. Whether or not they're market rate assumptions, it helps me. Not necessarily, I can relate to the seller, or it just helps me in my internal bank and I make my notes. It's like this guy will send you some good nuggets.
Yeah. I love it. At the simple things, right? For somebody that's listening that may not say, well, shoot, that's a lot of work. We're like, yeah, well, you're about to make an offer on a big on an apartment complex. You have a lot of work ahead of you. So what are you doing making an offer if you're not even prepared to do those initial things? But what I really enjoy was that that individual told you what he was going to do and followed through. I think the words, I don't know your words. I'm going to summarize. From my perspective, I heard most people don't do that even first part. They don't do what they said they were going to do. That just blows my mind, I guess, in general. What percentage of people, give you some kind of like, hey, I'm going to do this, and then don't follow through? They give you a commitment and don't follow through out of all the people you talk to.
I mean, I'm just gonna go off that, but the grand majority, 9 out of 10 people are gonna don't follow through, don't follow up, and they want everything that and the thing is, everyone tells me, hey man, I'm just looking for off market. This is the first time I've ever talked to anybody, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm just looking for off market deals. I'm like, cool, you and my grandmother are looking for off market deals.
Everyone.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But if you're not like just going through the motions and kind of walking, the thing is, you're selling yourself to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Like the same way I'm selling myself to a client that I want to earn their business, like
Yeah.
the buyer has to sell himself to me. I'm nobody, right? But at the end of the day, like if I control the inventory, you have to sell yourself to me. If this is a deal that you want, then yeah, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, yeah, it makes perfect sense. Um, you know, Robert, you don't do this out of the goodness of your heart, just like we kind of don't invest all of our hard-earned money, just because we want to improve a community. We want to help others, we want to
Right.
improve a community, but we also need to feed our own families and whichever means. And this is the way to do it. I mean, so you're commission based. We want to spend your time in the most effective area, just like any other normal professional person, which is I want to do the most, I want to be the most time efficient, time effective. I want to do the get the best results in the least amount of time. And that usually leans towards, helping people that, are going to deliver on what their promises and be able to perform. Right. So, it makes perfect sense. So the way I think about it in terms of like the normal MLS, people say, oh, 3% for the buyer, 3% for the seller.
Mm.
Works a little differently in the commercial real estate side, right? So illuminate this whole, percentage, commission, all this stuff so that we can understand and frame it next time we're talking to a professional like yourself.
I can summarize it by saying that everything's negotiable, right? And that's quite that, and that's the truth. Everything's negotiable. I'm not trying to be coy about it, but here just hear the optics, right?
Mm-hmm.
In MLS, there's predetermined splits. It's like I've never sold residential, so I'm assuming like either it's split down the middle or maybe the buyer's broker gets the most, whatever the case is.
Mm-hmm.
In
Mm-hmm.
this instance, it's the guy who controls the inventory makes the rules, right? Like if I'm listing XYZ apartments on 123 Main Street, and I have another broker who's like maybe somebody's being represented by another broker, they reach out to me. So and the common question I always ask by that broker is like, well, what are you allocating for buyer's fee? And I'm like, hey, it's negotiable. Why is it negotiable? Not because I'm mean, but because I don't know who else is coming to the table, right? So if I'm comparing three offers, one of them is being repped by another broker,
Mm-hmm.
and that other broker is asking for, essentially fee,
Mm-hmm.
and I got two other hot buyers, and the net to the seller is the same. I mean, you tell me, right? Like who you
Yeah.
tell me, boss.
Yeah.
But but think about it like this too. If I'm if I'm, you know, some sellers are okay with it, but if I'm a seller, I'm
Mm-hmm.
just asking myself, like if Robert Arzola is selling a deal, do I want to pay another broker money so that that other broker is working on behalf of his client to beat me up? It's like, oh, you need new roof. Oh, these HVAC suck. Oh, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
found aluminum wiring and you didn't do pigtails. All these things is like you got to look at the optics here, right? I'm as a seller, I'm paying somebody to beat me up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's okay because you just don't know. Like, what if that other guy is like half a million more in price than everybody else?
Yeah.
Hell, beat me up.
Yeah.
Go,
I'll take a you can call me
yeah,
Shirley.
yeah.
Uh
Can I have another, sir? No,
yeah.
and then but here's another thing too. The
Mm,
flip side to that is, as a buyer, I've worked. By the way, I've worked numerous deals with other brokers, and I've worked numerous deals with other brokers that are getting their fee from the buyer. Why? Well, because that buyer sees the importance on having somebody on his side that does this on a daily basis, and
mhm.
and it's not a first time buyer. It's like, he just it I dealt with numerous clients that, we just want to use this individual because they're good at negotiating. We trust this individual negotiate on our behalf, and we've done numerous deals, and that's how it works. And so that, we don't trust the listing brokers because they just want the most money, right?
Sure.
Anyways,
Yeah.
anyways.
No, this is all good insight. These are all good insights because that's what, a new general partner is trying to figure out. Well, shoot, I want to buy a deal. I want to try to figure out how. I'm probably not going to invest time, effort, and energy into calling a bunch of potential sellers off of a CoStar list or whatever. And it's just hard for them, anybody to trust me. I go to commercial real estate broker, but I want them to send me a deal. They're better buyers. And, whether it's my perspective or not, it's like, there's people that have performed 10, 15, 20 times. And, I'm trying to get the first one. So, having this insight does really provide, some wisdom a little bit, at least in this conversation, framing
Right.
the first conversation with somebody to say, how do they win? How, what do they think about? And now you have some insight and wisdom. And I would say rewind that if you are, trying to make your first offer and try to talk with a new broker in a different market, or a new, this is the first time you're going after it. That was really good, Robert. Thank you very much. So what, from your perspective, right? Everything that you have going, you've had a lot of success. You've done a lot of great things. Like, why did you choose the multifamily segment, or why did you end up going, this particular path? You probably could have done a lot of things now,
Right.
especially in your career, your development. Like, why multifamily? Why commercial real estate multifamily? Just talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, with the hotel background, the space that I was focused on was private client, and so I was working on the limited service, select service hotels. You know, what that means is Motel Sixes, La Quintas.
Mm-hmm.
So just think about it: a Motel Six in La Quinta, maybe it's like a 50. Let's talk them in units, because there's 50 rooms. So maybe it's a 50-room hotel, right? 50
Mm-hmm.
unit apartment. Well, there's they're very rarely going to go 100 plus, 200, which you see that all day in multifamily. So what I wanted to do, like at like my late 20s, it was like, what, I'm at a point where I'm not necessarily a real estate practitioner, right? Like I'm a salesman, and I'm just doing this all the time. Not saying that you can't be a real estate practitioner selling hotels. That's
Mm-hmm.
not where I'm getting at. But at that point, I just wasn't. I saw myself like very one-dimensional. I wanted to broaden my horizons, and so I was very fortunate enough to land at JLL with a really strong team and group of guys. And what that allowed me to do was focus on larger deals. That allowed me to, in my opinion, I think multifamily brokers are some of the best in the business, some of the best in commercial real estate, because there's way more transactions in multifamily than there is like, this is Robert Arzola speaking. This is from my purview. There's way more transactions in multifamily. When I was making the transition from hotels to multifamily, I was like, in the year of 2017, it was like there's like 70 hotels that sold in this entire state of Texas.
Yeah.
I'm like, double that sold in San Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, you know what? I want to go where the money's at.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that the money isn't in hotels, but there's a lot more velocity, and there's a lot more appreciation. In hotels, it's very much of a business play, more so in the select service space, because it's nightly. Think of it as nightly leases.
Mm-hmm.
Multifamily, it's yearly leases. Um, and it's not just a real estate play. Excuse me, it's not just a business play, it's a real estate play. And a bunch of things just started. I just wanted to grow in my profession, and that's multifamily was my avenue to do that.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. It's I definitely echo or have the same sentiments just about, my investing, from one asset class to another. And this is what I felt about multifamily, the same way, even just from the investor side. So that's amazing. So, on the same kind of, mindset or path, from an advisory role, because I heard a couple other things that I didn't hit on earlier because I wanted to wait till now. When you talk to a new seller,
Mhm.
somebody that's thinking about selling their property, you're the person that's maybe reaching out, or they already know JLL, they reached out, or you have them as one of your, consistent clients, right? They come to you for the advice, and they come to you to advise them on, that you have that expertise, and they're asking you, hey man, is this the right, like, what's my property worth? The broker's opinion.
Mhm.
And then what is, what's the going on today? Should I refinance? Should I sell? What's my best position? So, what kind of skills and expertise should I expect a good broker to have in my journey, my investing journey? Because you know, we definitely want to know on that side. Some of us are going to go on to buy 10, 15, 20 plus properties, even if it's our first one now. So like, man, I want to grow with somebody. I want to, have somebody that's going to help me through the process. So what should I, expect of an amazing broker on my side, and what value can they provide me?
Right. I mean, it's interesting. It's going to sound silly, but first and foremost, you got to like them, right? You got to like the guy that you're working with. You got to like the responses you're getting, the service. At the end of the day, we're a service provider. And is your broker calling you back? Is he responding? Is he doing the work, or does he have other juniors doing the work for him, right? Or just we can go on and on about the service part of a brokerage. Part of that is you need to feel good inside about working with him or her, excuse me. And then second, and a couple of the things too is like, are they competent? Have they done deals in the area? Have it kind of like how, a realtor is like, well, no, I only work on the north side. Well, my house is on the west side, right? And it's like, well, you might not know how to value this. How detailed is their broker opinion of value? I mean, like, what are they talking about? Because sometimes if they're just providing numbers and they're not providing a story, because often, an extra $500,000, an extra $250,000, an extra $1,000,000 goes into the story, right? I'll give you a good example where I messed up. So we were presenting our BOV for a deal in, the I-35 corridor where everyone just wants to go into the 35 corridor. And I'm like, you know what, this property, it's I-35 corridor. Everybody loves it, right? And so I was doing the same spiel that everyone was talking about, presenting my value. I was $1 million lower than, the next guy, right? And this was not recent. This was a while back. Just FYI, I'm not making these mistakes.
Yeah, we're definitely learning from all of our mistakes.
Yeah, it's not recent. And this other shop, they had like $1 million more. I'm like, what? Nah, they just bought that business. They don't know what they're talking about. Well, where this property was located,
Yeah,
was in the downtown part of this in between city of in the I-35 corridor, in between city of San Antonio and Austin, right? I mean, I knew that, I saw that, I didn't know what was around it, or I did, but you didn't know. And so they just crafted this story, and it only takes one buyer to prove you right. There can be 9 buyers to be like, in Robert Arzola's camp, like, yeah, Robert Arzola knows what he's talking about with those 9 out of 10. But that one buyer is like, oh, well, they lucked out. They got that black swan, or not black swan. They just got that guy, and yeah, no, so to that point that I'm making is that you have to have someone who can really craft and sell the story, and understands that, because at the end of the day, like, this is real estate. And you're just not looking at the comps. You're just like, because everyone's just like, well, what are the comps? And they're just looking. Oh, well, you see the deal next door, the price per square foot is not what's in your book, right? It's 20. What's in your book is 20 cents more what these guys are achieving. I was like, well, look where this is located, and look what you can do. What these guys are not doing, all that other jive. And just so you know, that deal right now is going through their unit enhancement program. I'm not going to say it, and they're achieving far more than what I originally thought. So it's that story, it's that entrepreneurship. At the end of the day, we're all entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
And it takes some of that. Sometimes, it's a little far out there, but you got to work with someone who you like working, or who you like working with, who's responsive, who knows their stuff, who can walk you through it. If after the conversation you can explain it to your grandmother, if after the conversation you can explain it to your investors, they know their stuff. If you come out confused,
Mm-hmm,
he doesn't
mm-hmm.
know what he or she does not know what he's talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes it makes a lot of sense. I like the story perspective because that's, what we're trying to do is here's the comps, but in this market, in this area, in this region, or in this, I-35 corridor, for those people that are not from Texas or don't know the San Antonio, there's a space between San Antonio and Austin. That's I-35 is the highway. That's the corridor. It's like a 45 to an hour minute drive from San Antonio to Austin. And it just like continues to converge or connect through San Marcos and New Braunfels and Schertz, and population's growing. And so is the property is growing and continues to expand, new build, and also the trades that are happening. The prices are going up and up. And yeah, anyways, that's the I-35 corridor. But yeah, if you can project, hey, this is what's actually going to happen. And if you do these three things, interior unit, capex, reposition, whatever, market, whatever, the property is going to be a higher value. And then you're like, okay, well, that is the story, but is that a good solid business strategy? And if everyone agrees, then it trades for a higher price, and you go do the deal, and then we sell it again in a few years, well, maybe potentially for a higher price. So that's all good. That's great, Robert. Thanks for sharing that insight. So the last couple of questions that I have, man, are like, what, as a general partner talking to you, I'm trying to buy a deal. Okay. I'm trying to buy it. What are the right questions that I should be asking you, about a property, make sure I get the best deal? So this is a little bit of the insider stuff, right? What do I ask you or any other broker? Like, man, what are the best questions to ask you to make sure I'm buying the deal correctly or at the right price, the right basis?
So every buyer asks me, well, what's the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll go through my story. Every buyer asks me, well, what is this going to be? Call for offers, or will the seller preempt the process?
Mm-hmm.
Buyers who are worth their salt will ask me, in sticking onto that preemptive process, what price is it going to, like, I'll have guys tell me what price is it going to take. You just don't know, right? You just, and sometimes there are deals. It's like, yeah, you know what? If you hit this number, this is the bogey, go ahead, shoot it. I'm trying to think too, what another buyer comes and asks me, first time guy. Yeah. Set aside time to, first time buyer, set aside time to truly and properly go through underwriting. A lot of, myself and a lot of my competitors, there are times where we'll actually set aside time and actually go through our underwriting. And that's important when you're buying your first deal, because here's the thing. You may be going into the market where you don't know how they necessarily reassess for taxes. Okay. And you might be the guy that's reassessing 95%, which is obviously going to hurt your valuation when everyone else is, reassessing for 80%. Like, I just can't get to your number, Robert. You guys don't know what you're doing. I was like, well, hold on a second, man. What are you doing here? And then payroll is another big thing. It depends on market. So go through the underwriting with your broker. Set aside specific time to talk about that. A couple of the other questions that a buyer could ask is, hey, after the call for offers, if I'm not competitive, can you let me know where it ended up? I'm not going to call everybody and tell them that, that hey, here's where it ended up. Particularly if you're not competitive. Sometimes I will, just to, if we had a very heated conversation, you don't know what you're doing. Yeah. I was like, hey, by the way, Frank.
By the way, I traded 2.5 million higher than you offered, but no sweat. I'll talk to you on the next one. But anyways, that's good though. That's good though. Yeah. You're saying, buyer, hey, could you let me know where I stand afterwards? Right?
That's the same thing that I asked. That's the same thing I asked my sellers. It's like, look, where did everyone show up? What were they doing? What could I have done different? Who was the top? Who was it? And you know what? Everyone's different. Some sellers are going to be like, oh, well, this group was at top, and actually, well, you guys were actually like kind of higher than everybody else. What are you guys doing? Do you really think you can support that value? Yeah. Having that open and honest dialogue, I think, um, is important. Whether, for me as a broker talking to seller or for a buyer talking to me, I think at the end of the day, it is a people business, right? And so you
Mm-hmm.
just got to talk to everybody. Like, brokers get a bad rap sometimes because we're like, hey, especially when you come from like the residential side, like you sometimes you think that, oh, these guys would just do resi on the side, or they're kind of used car salesman mentality. No, look, we're all practitioners here. We're all professionals. um I'm willing to have a straight up conversation with anybody. I'll get open, we'll get open kimono, you get open kimono, we'll talk, and that's the only way to do business. Don't hold your cards, man. These guys, well, I don't know if I can tell you, or my number, or I don't know this. It's
Yeah.
just, look, it's open conversation. There are times to be discreet. There are times to withhold information, and that's okay too. You know.
Yep.
So that's interesting that I said. I think a lot of times first time buyers, they're so close to the chest. I don't know if they know what they're doing sometimes.
Yeah, makes a perfect sense. We got, like you said, people business. We got to work together. The communication happens. It may not work out to your favor on a single deal, but if we're talking about many multiple transactions over time, building a trust-based relationship on, hey, I'd like to buy many multiple, and this is what it's going to be like. And if you know who I am and I know who you are, then we can cut a lot of the stuff out and say, hey, this will actually get a deal done. And then your seller advising them as well, because obviously we just want a deal to close on your side and on our side. So that's great, man. All of this stuff is good. Robert, you spent a good amount of time giving us a little bit of wisdom, insight from your perspective. And I don't want to keep you longer than I had you, but I had such a good conversation, man. It kept flowing. So thank you very much for everything. If somebody wants to reach out to you and get into your world, San Antonio seller or buyer, where do I go to? Where do I reach out to, and how do I contact you?
Yeah, look, I'm super open on LinkedIn. Robert Arzola, JLL Capital Markets, multi-housing director. Look that up. You'll find me. You can reach out to me on my number. Abel, I trust that you'll provide that information. You can reach out to me on
you can
via
say it
email.
out loud too if you wanted to.
Fantastic. Reach out to me. My number, mobile, is 956-251-3282. My office line is 210-839-2042. Reach out to me in email. So that's Robert.Arzola, Arzola, at am.jll.com.
Yeah, and we will put it in the show notes, but so that you have it as well. And yeah, man, we look forward to continuing on the relationship and continuing working together. Is there anything that you wanted to highlight today? Anything that you wanted to bring some extra exposure to? I just didn't ask you, or last parting words, just anything in general, man.
I just think that what you guys are doing, Abel, at 5 Talents Commercial Real Estate is just superb and fantastic. I think one thing that I will highlight is just, if there's someone that you want to, as a first-time GP, as a passive, talk to guys who are active, producing content. Abel's one of them. So nothing on my side, Abel. Just want to highlight that I really appreciate everything that you're doing. I mad respect, as they say. So continue the good work.
All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And for everyone else, I'm Abel Pacheco, the host of your 5 Talents Commercial Real Estate Podcast. And we would appreciate you liking, so we're subscribing, rating, and reviewing. Leave us a written review if you think we can get better, or give us some feedback. And if you think we're 5-star, put it in the reviews. We'd love it. So thank you very much. We'll see you on the next show. Robert, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the 5 Talents Podcast with your host, myself, Abel Pacheco. Each week, we're going to bring you interviews from industry experts and commercial real estate investors who followed their dreams and achieved massive success. Before you leave, let me ask you a few questions. Did you enjoy this episode? Did you learn something valuable? Was your mind stretched to what's possible and what you can achieve? Do you want other experts just like the one you heard today? If you answered yes to any or all of those questions, then please take a moment to subscribe to the 5 Talents podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and most importantly, leave us a written review. Tell us what you liked, tell us your favorite guest, give us any feedback. I'm excited to learn and improve so you can get a more valuable show. So thank you again for subscribing to the 5 Talents podcast.